Hi, this is Russ Anderson. Today I want to talk about the ViewShift system in SynthEyes, which can be used for removing objects from shots, for combining split takes, for animated texture map creation, and probably for a bunch of other stuff I haven't thought of. Now this is a full 3D effect. It's kind of a general 3D version of some traditional 2D painting effects. This is just a regular shot that we're going to work on, but this also works with tripod shots and also with 360 VR shots with some limitations. So there are a lot of details to this, and I'll invite you in advance to check out the manual on this as well. In this shot, we're going to remove the white car in the bottom lane there. That could be a camera car in the shot that's trailing along behind the action, for example. So as you can see, I'm starting from a already solved shot. We've calculated some quadratic and even some quartic distortion, so it comes out with a reasonable HPX error. And we've set up a coordinate system for it along this road using these 3 trackers here. So that's just a very standard setup. To begin with, we're going to create a mesh, and this is going to be a plane sort of right along the road. So you see that here. Just going to rough that in. I'm going to hit the backslash key just to switch to a wireframe view. If we scrub through the shot, you see the alignment isn't the best for this road. So I'm going to just switch to rotate it a little bit to get a bit better alignment down the entire road. This we're going to call a reflector mesh. And the basic idea is we're going to kind of be bouncing pixels off of it that come from one shot and then go to another shot. Now here I'm using just a plane, but this could in fact be any kind of mesh. Could be a terrain model of the surroundings, side of a building, a complex model of a building, or even a character of some kind. And not only can it be just a single mesh, but it can be any number of meshes as well. So there's a lot of flexibility here. So to start off with our ViewShift, we're going to create it here. And you'll see that there are a lot of controls. Now fundamentally this is a kind of integrated camera mapping and rendering subsystem. See a bunch of controls on this side. They control where pixels come from, that's the source shot, and where they get viewed from, that's the viewing shot. Now, let's start out by just setting up an output file. And some compression for that. Bump it up a little. So let's go right ahead and see what we've got. I'm just going to click Run Now. And here we go. You see we've got basically exactly that part of the shot that is sitting on the plane. So this is just viewing the plane from exactly the same spot with a texture map that's the shot applied to it. So that seems simple enough. Now the ViewShift system can be controlled either by splines, but also by meshes. In this particular tutorial, we're going to be using splines as it's convenient. It can also be controlled by meshes, which is the subject of a following tutorial. Since we want to take out this car, we want to create a spline that travels along with it. Now to make that as simple and painless as possible, we're going to create a tracker just sitting on the roof of it. So this is just going to be a nice, simple, quick and dirty one. We'll let that run through the shot. So there we go. There's our roof tracker. We'll just lock that up. Now we can jump over to the Roto Panel, and we're going to create a spline. And let's just zoom in here. We're going to put the center point of the spline right basically where the tracker is. You'll see why in a minute. Now we're just going to wander around and create our spline. You can see I just double click to change to corners. I'm going to right click to terminate the spline. And now I'm just double clicking those two to make them corners also. So there's our spline. Let's just not do that. Let's hit escape. And now we want to select the tracker. I'm going to hit the 5 key to get pan to follow just so we can see this through the whole shot. And, you know, it goes wandering off. So the thing that I'm going to do, I've got the tracker selected, and I'm going to collect this import tracker to control point. And I'm going to click on that car's, the center point of the spline. It's going to ask absolute or relative, and we're going to do absolute. So it keyed up that center point. Let me get the tracker selected again. Let's turn this off. So by the end of the shot, the car's rotated a bit, gotten a little bit bigger maybe. So now we'll just adjust these corner points. We definitely want to leave some margin around the outside of the car here. Now, back to our tracker and pan to follow mode. There we go with our car tracked through the shot. Now let's go back to our ViewShift, and we're going to set it up to use that spline to control it. First thing we're going to do, the spline that we just added, we don't want that to be garbage. We want that to be assigned to camera 1 that we're going to use. There's an existing spline that goes around the entire image that is used as auto tracking by default. That we don't need, so we're just going to mark it that we don't want to show it, and that'll make ViewShift ignore it. And then we're going to turn on the Use Viewing Splines. It says, hey, we want the pixels to be put into that spline. Now we're ready to go again. You can see here, we've now just got that one little patch that's coming off of the road plane. And we could see that we could composite that over top of the original image. And we can do that easily enough. So let's just do that. We'll show we're going to change the output type now to just from that with alpha setting to over background. We'll get a quick look at what we're doing. There you go, and you say, oh, well, we haven't done anything yet, right? We're just putting the car right back over top of where it was to start with. So what we really want to have happen is we want to take the pixels from that patch of the road when the car isn't on it and use them to replace that spot on the road where the car is. That's what we want to do. How can we set that up? Just for starters, how about we'll take the source, we'll tell it, hey, just use 30 frames later. So let's rack this up to 30 frames as the control. And this is the timing control that selects what mode gets used to figure out which frame to use from the source image for the viewing camera. So we're just telling it, we want to have a 30 frame offset. Now let's just do it back to the alpha version. And now we see, oh, hey, we got the right thing going on there. We've got no road right up until the end where all of a sudden the car reappears, and that's because there's no 30 frames available past the end of the shot to use. So just for fun, let's go, and now we'll go and do the comp. Now you see we've got a reasonable start on getting rid of the car from this shot. Again, the car magically reappears at the end, and you can see the section that's being removed in the middle. But that's a start, and we'll address different aspects of it here as we go along. So let's go back and think about this 30 frame thing for a second. That is okay for a car moving along at a constant speed, but what if it speeds up, it slows down, something else happens along the way? And, is it really too far? Maybe we can do better. Maybe you don't need as many frames. There's actually a nifty way to address that inside of the ViewShifter, where we can have it pick out the nearest frame that doesn't overlap between the area that pixels are being pulled from and taking to. So I've just flipped that on, and now let's go and run that again. And you look at it and get basically the same result, except now at the end, the car is gone. And that's because the disjoint operation goes in, and if it can't, find a frame that's after, and it can be looking either before or after, but if it can't find a frame to use in the direction that you've set initially, then it'll go and look in the other direction. So that helps out at the beginning and end of the shot, where it can flip to use something that's actually usable without any fuss or muss. Now, after that disjoint mode is used, if you look at the frame control, you'll see that it's animated it up. And it's telling you on each of these frames, for any given viewing frame, what source frame is being used. If you go and you were to switch this to absolute mode here, then it would use that frame control value to drive this process instead. So you can go and fine tune this manually if you want. And you can also go out and look in the graph editor. Here's the animated version of this, the graph for that value. And you can see where it went, and it switched to use a frame earlier rather than a frame later. And again, you can not only look at this, but you can also edit it up as you would like. Now you notice there's some spots it's not always going along at 1 frame per 1 frame here. The ViewShift system doesn't do any subframe analysis. It's always going to the nearest frame. So depending on what the speeds of various things are, it may hop along by 1 frame at a time, 2 frames at a time, whatever's necessary to make it come out so that they don't overlap. So you can see that there. Let's go back to our output file again. And if you look at the area where the replacement is being done, one of the things that lets you see where that's happening are the fairly sharp edges along the edge of that region. And that's something that we have control over. So let's go take a look at that now. Go back to our ViewShift. You'll see there's a little anti-aliasing being done along that edge. We can turn that up higher. We also have the ability to actually start blending in and out around the edges of that. We can increase this pull in up, maybe it'll rack it up to 3 or something. That's saying let's blend in over the 3 pixel region around the edge of the spline, basically. We also have the ability to push out a bit, and in that case some pixels are getting replicated to be able to do that, I'll point out. For this kind of an insert, where we're inserting something into basically the same object, the same thing. You want to use that pull in. So let's go and fire that up. And now as you scrub through, you can see that there's a much softer boundary there between the two different regions, the part that's being replaced from, an earlier frame or later frame, and the existing area. That hides that boundary a bit better. And of course, you're still seeing the boundary, and that's a key thing that we'd like to address. So if you think about this, what's going on is that the exposure and illumination level isn't constant throughout the length of the shot. And there's a really cool feature in the ViewShift that lets you compensate for that. So we're going to go and do that now. And first things first is we have to give it an idea of how the illumination really is changing. To do that, we are going to set up a tracker. And we want the tracker to be sitting on the road, so that's going to give us a nice, fairly bright level that we can measure the intensity of. And we want to put it somewhere where it doesn't get run over by the car or have anything else bad happen to it. If necessary, you can use a couple of different trackers. It's easier, of course, to use just one. So we'll just use the end of this white line over there. So let's just go and drop a tracker there. We'll roll down the size a bit. I'm going to hit my 5 key again to get pan to follow. We'll just have this go through the shot. So this doesn't have to be a super crucial thing. See, it drifts a little. If we wanted, we could correct that. But we're going to declare victory. We're going to do one slightly sneaky thing, is that we're about to measure the intensity of that interior portion of the tracker. So we're going to cheat a little to get better data by just increasing that size. We don't want to rerun the tracker because that'll actually make the tracker not work as well. So we're just going to lock it up like that. So now we're going to be using a bigger region than we actually tracked. Next, we need to move over to the light panel. And here we want to go and create a new light. And the light is going to be what's holding the illumination data. Just going to hit W to be able to move this guy around. We'll put him sort of in a rightish sort of location. If we wanted to, we could use some of the rays to get it actually in the right direction, but we don't need that here. We're just going to put it out, so if we happen to do something that relies on it a little, we'll get something plausible. And we've got the light. Now we want to select our tracker and run a script, and this is going to be the trackers area, set illumination from trackers. So we're going to set up the illumination for this light 01 based on that tracker. And these are just default settings. We'll actually change this to use 2D only because we really only have a 2D position. We're going to hit OK. So that's set up the illumination level of that light. Now we can go over to the graph editor and take a look at that. So these three curves are the red, green, and blue levels of illumination through the shot as measured at that particular spot in the scene. Our next trick is going to be to use that information to do the ViewShift compensation to get a much better insert. So let's bring back our ViewShift, and we're going to turn on the compensate illumination checkbox. Now we'll just run it again. So now we scrub through the shot, and hey, we're talking. So, if you know exactly where to look, you can see that there's something going on, but it's really pretty down in the noise level. And of course, you could go and play around with these controls a bit more to see if you need to adjust things anymore. It's generally a fairly controllable process. So just to go back and look at this ViewShift again, we've got a lot of controls. We've got just one of these things here at the moment. So the sneak peek is that, oh, hey, you can have a whole bunch of these things in the scene. They are actually phases. So you can actually create a bunch of them. You can create them down here as a ViewShift. You can go and duplicate new ones and so on and create some interesting additional effects, combining them together or having different multiple outputs from the same scene. Again, a whole bunch of details about that in the manual. So we've really just scratched the beginnings of what you can do with the ViewShift. To recap, it works with arbitrary meshes, not just the planes that we have here. It could be a full terrain mesh, could be a mesh for a building, for a fearsome character, whatever. We've been controlling it here using splines. There are plenty more things to do with splines, but we can also use meshes, additional meshes, to control what's going on. You'll see that in a different tutorial. You can use ViewShift to extract texture maps. You can also write the images out as basically the colorful distortion maps that might be able to tell your compositor where to move the pixels around if you're so inclined. A lot of different possibilities here. Check out the manual, check out the other tutorials, have some fun. Thanks for watching.